to deal with international trade, which might bypass SWIFT and the dollar? And what direction is that headed in your assessment?
Well, countries are increasingly trading with each other or enabling companies within their countries to trade with other companies in other countries through national currencies. So the historic, meaning the post-Second World War mechanisms, were floating or trade settlements denominated in US dollars. So if I'm selling something, the buyer would convert their domestic currency, go buy US dollars. The US dollars would then be settled the transaction. I would receive the US dollars. I would then use those US dollars to buy my local currency. Now, all of that process is obviously quite funky. It involves more steps than you need, number one. Number two, it meant that the transacting parties were always exposed to exchange rate volatility risk. So, in the end, by the time the US dollar arrived with me 4 or 5 days later, what was the exchange risk? Did I gain or lose? Which is not a particularly great way to run an export business. So you always had to then hedge against exchange rate volatility, which would cost money. So it actually increased the cost of doing business. But more recently, the weaponization of the dollar, meaning the ability for the United States to block the adjustment of losses denominated in US dollars between transacting parties, meant that they could in effect stop the flow of trade. Now, that was never going to happen. So the ability for the US to sanction and block trade flows might have been something that was more viable 10 or 15 years ago, but it's certainly not viable anymore. And it's not viable anymore in large part because since about 2014, 2015, there have been alternatives to the SWIFT system. The SWIFT system, just so that your listeners can sort of appreciate how the system works, it's an interbank messaging system. So what happens in cross-border trade is that my bank, my commercial bank in my country, will need to send messages to counterparties in your bank because I'm essentially deducting off my ledger and you're going to add to your client's ledger. But for that to happen, there's confidence basically that goes through a central bank. Because it's the central bank ledgers that are being ultimately settled. And the central banks need to tell each other what's going on and to request action and to give instructions. So that's actually sending messages. It's actually not sending money at all. Money doesn't get sent like that. So SWIFT is a way in which messages are relayed between banks. Now, the SWIFT infrastructure runs through data centers, and one of the main data centers that it runs through is in the United States in Virginia. Because it's located in Virginia, it falls underneath American jurisdiction. And because it's in American jurisdiction, various authorities have used that as a way of enabling us to maintain the function of SWIFT. So you've got to have other ways in which banks can send messages to each other. And so China and Russia in particular developed their own interbank messaging system in the mid-2010s so that bank-to-bank communications could take place